Empiezo ya. Hola. Hola a todos. Bueno, yo soy Ramón. Voy a hacer la charla en inglés o en español, como queráis, o mezclado. En principio lo iba a hacer en inglés. Si no hay nadie que la quiera en inglés, ¿English anyone? La hacemos en español, como queráis. Bueno, la voy a hacer en inglés porque lo prometí, a lo mejor lo están grabando. Si alguien tiene preguntas en español o no se quiere atrever a hacerlas en inglés, lo podéis hacer en español y yo lo traduzco, ¿vale? So, let's go to business. So, I'm going to talk about the things that they are very, career, but I'm going to talk from my point of view. So if you work in a startup, if you work in a consultancy, if you work in another place, you are studying, this might not apply to you. So this is just, I come here to speak about my book, basically. Okay. So let's go to business. So first, couple of public service announcements. What I said, if you want to make questions in Spanish or whatever, just be happy for doing that. And remember that there is only one stupid question that you can think, that is the question you don't make. So if you have a question, just state it. It's just fine. No one is going to judge. The second one is what I said. This is something from my point of view. So I think it's something very generic if you work in big companies, like as a career path of like you are an individual contributor, then you are a TL, and so on and so forth. But you need to take it with a grain of salt, right? So, who am I? So I started 10 years ago at Google. I'm not a software engineer, I'm a systems engineer. That's basically the same, but different. Right? So I look at after systems, basically. I write software, so my work is that of a software engineer in a sense, but I look more about like Linux internals, like networks, systems architecture for reliability and so on. So I work in a team that is called SRE, that is Site Reliability Engineering. So what we do is supporting services so they work for you like all the time. And people get very unhappy when they don't. So that's what we do, right? So I was a junior syseng, and what I did is junior things, like my small project in my corner of the world, and that stuff. Over time, I became technical lead. We'll see what that is at the later, but basically I was like saying like, hey, we should do this instead of that, right? And people were saying like, that's a good idea. And it's like, okay, that's new, right? In like a year after, I was promoted. We'll see what promoted, what like emphasis in the quote was to manager. So I was the manager or the line manager for a team of 7. I was happy until the team kept growing, and then we were like 42 people. And last year, I went back for being a TL. So I'm not the manager anymore. It's just about too much people, right? Well, it was not too much people because they were nice, but I went back to that. So what do I do, right? So I'm working the privacy, security, safety and security team. I don't even know the name because it changes like 3 times a year. So privacy, safety and security, I always say it's PSS, right? Because then the 2 S's have changed in meaning in the last year, so I just say PSS, right? But basically what we do is we run critical production services that you might know. For example, this service is something that we run. So whenever you type your user account, there is a shit show happening behind the scenes for giving you a cookie, right? So we have, just for the sign-in, for example, we have 185 microservices. We use like more than a few million CPUs for running them in like more than 20 data centers, right? Sounds great. It's easier than it looks. It's just big, right? And the thing is like, there's a lot of legacy in there, for example. So for the sign-in was created for Gmail in 2004 because it's like, oh, we need people to have an account. How do we do that? Well, we'll roll around, right? And this thing started as a Berkeley DB kind of thing. It was very like Campechano style. And then now evolved, like we have like tens of billions of accounts and stuff like that. And the availability needs to be very high because it's not that, you have your Gmail and okay, it's fine to receive spam, but there is like enterprises now, depending on this. There are YouTube creators here that they have their own account. And then there is all sorts of stuff for the safety and security. Like, for example, we have anti-abuse systems. So your YouTube channel is not hijacked or impersonated by others. That usually happens. Well, usually. It could happen. But because I mean the systems, they are not like infrankable, but the amounts of like spam and hate and shit that is coming to our systems that we detect and we remove is very much mostly all of it, right? So as well, we try to do this at scale and try to make the internet a better place. For example, we were the team that launched at the beginning or designed the first security keys. That is this thing that you plug and you can like use as a second factor. And we use other new protocols, etc., for other companies to use them as well. So that's what I do. But it breaks as well. So my team is on call for the services, and when things happen, we have to intervene and resolve the problems. This is an outage I personally myself caused. So I broke it, right? I mean, I'm still there, so it's fine. And we do a lot of systems design, we do a lot of software engineering, but there is as well the other side that is fixing when things break. These outages usually can become a bit stressful because there is like all the products are affected and so on, but with some training and with some exercises, you go through them. But I'm not going to talk about this today. So we're going to talk about the transition between being an individual contributor, then becoming a TL, having like a more kind of leadership role in a team, developing that, growing your team, and then becoming a manager, right? And then you hate it so much that you go back. No, you don't hate it, right? So to start with, what is an IC? What is an individual contributor? This is a term that you will see coming from big tech many times. Do you want to be an IC? An IC, no one outside of like new graduates from universities or people that works in other things that is not big tech knows what it is. So, but an IC is the engineer, the person that is running the project. It's the person that actually makes the work, to be honest. Right? So what you do as an IC is you deliver on projects. So you are part of a team, the team has a roadmap, the team has a scope. For example, ours is like identity, authentication, all that stuff. So we don't write the search engine, but we do something else. So we do projects along those lines on that. So you as an IC get one of these projects and you deliver. Generally, you deliver autonomously, means that you can write your code, put it in production and so on, so you don't need someone that is looking after you like every single minute of the day. That doesn't mean that you are in isolation, right? I always tell this to my people, this, like, autonomy is not isolation. You can ask questions, for example, that's fine. Like, you can just, like, you know, take the lead for having the project actually happening and actually landing, right? You need to, as well, one thing that you develop over time is that you need to align your projects and your priorities to that of your team or your company. So it's like, okay, you need to work in something that is meaningful for you and for the company, right? Over time, when you are an IC, the projects become bigger, right? So we do have job ladder, right? And you have levels. For example, when I was joining the company, I entered in the level 3, and then I got a few promotions, and I'm L7 now, right? And how that comes to be? That comes by having projects that they are more complex, projects that they are more impactful, projects that involve other people. For example, when there is a moment in time that you get some projects that you just can't do yourself. Like you can just, by yourself alone, write the design doc, have it like discuss with your team, then write the whole code, right? Put it in production, like monitor it, support it, and so on. There's a moment that doesn't scale anymore, right? So you start involving other people, right? Your teammates. You start involving people that is more junior than you, for example, right? You start like training them, coaching them, growing them, like creating some like structure around you, right? And that's when that complexity you get, for example, in a big company, you get like promotions and so on, right? That's the point in time with some people says like, I would like to be like a formally kind of TL kind of thing, but that's not always a mandatory thing that you have to do. So do you want to be an IC forever? By all means, right? This path is something that is typical, but it's not something that is mandatory that you go into like a formal kind of management, Mr. Pointy hair management kind of thing, right? We have many people in our company that is just ICs that they have been there for 20 years. They are doing IC work, more complex or more different, or they have been moving into teams with different scopes or whatever it is, and that's all great. That's all fine, right? But other people, what they start doing is that they get invested, for example, in the team success. So I was saying before that you keep, like, for example, coaching other people, you keep helping people that is around you, like, for example, to teaching them new tech, to helping them with their projects, to tell them what's the technical direction that they should be going on. Like, for example, when there is a new person that joins the team, they don't know exactly what are the projects that are important for the team or the company. They just know that they have to do stuff. But between project A and project B, Okay, whatever the manager or the TL says, like is more important. Over time, they will learn all that stuff. At the beginning, there has to be someone that teaches them all that thing, right? And then as well, you come to own, in quotes, like some functional area of your stuff. For example, I was at the beginning owning the capacity deployment. So if you are in the cloud, that's fine. It's all scalable ad infinitum unless you are the cloud, right? In that case, you need to deploy machines. And deploying machines is a royal pain in the ass. For one reason, it's like there has to be things like a place to put them. So you need to build the building, right? And such a building needs to have like, I don't know, electricity, seems to have like fibers, stuff like that, right? So that takes a long time to happen, right? You might need, if you want to build a data center, you might need like 3 years from decisions to procurement. And they are gonna come to us saying like, hey, so we need your services because, you know, we're gonna run Gmail in there and Gmail kinda needs authentication, right? So how many machines are you gonna need? And you say, well, I don't know how much Gmails are going to be in there. And they say, okay, so many there. And then you start like doing some projects for saying like, I'm not going to do an Excel again. Like, sorry, that's not going to happen again. And you say like, going to do a project to do forecasting and all that stuff. So that's what a TL does. Right? They're going to get an ambiguous problem, which is like, hey, so we need to, when we build a data center, you need to answer the question of how many machines, right? Seems easy, is not, right? So you need to build software for that to happen, so it's scalable, so you don't need to have 10 people working on that every single day because that's expensive. So that's what a TL would do. And that means owning like this functional area of capacity planning, for example, right? And there are many others. You can do, like, I'm in infrastructure, and that's the thing we do. But if you are in front end and you work in the search engine, you might own, for example, the UX for like the widgets that they provide information in the site or whatever is that is your thing, right? When you have that, right, you start creating opinions. And having opinions is great, right? Just don't attach too much to them. Like there is a moment which you can let go, right? But the thing is like your opinions, you can translate them into a roadmap, right? To say like, okay, we work in this problem, like the capacity planning, right? And we see that this is hard, and we see that this is a challenge, or we see that this is expensive. And you start creating a roadmap. Like these are the things that we need to do in the next year, for example, to make this better. So we need to invest in having some machine learning for doing the, you know, the placement of the computers or whatever it is, or we need to invest into making this software, like for example, more reliable because it's breaking all the time, or more like faster, whatever that is, right? And then you know very well this, right? So when you present it, right, people say like, yeah, that sounds good. It can happen that they do agree or they don't have any idea, but they usually get traction, right? Because you have more experience and so on, right? What this means is you start impacting other people's executions. You start getting like the people that is around you in your team, or perhaps in other teams, if your scope is even bigger, you start influencing them. You start telling them, like, this is the things that we need to do. And they say, like, sure, we'll do that, right? And all that stuff, right? And then time passes, you know very well your scope, so you start becoming a reservoir of institutional knowledge. That's a great naming for saying, like, the things that they are not documented, usually you know them. So people, and that tends to be, like, documentation is, I don't know. There are some places that is great, there are some places that is not great, but generally, there is a lot of things that they are just known, right? So you are that person for that thing, whether you like it or not, right? At that point, you're a TL. There are some places that they will give you a badge, say like the sheriff, like you are the TL now, and you all, it's going to be great. Other places or other teams or other people don't want it, right? Other people don't want actually the badge. They say like, nah, I'm going to be a CL, an IC. In fact, you are a TL, right? So this is what the TL does, right? It's just knowing what the team should be doing next, right? What happens when you are a TL, right? This is something that some people hated. I hated it for a long time until something clicked, and it was like, oh, it's actually useful, right? What I'm doing, right? And there are the 3 frustrations of a TL, right? The first one is that you are interruptible, right? And this, until you wrap your head around that, it's hard. It's like you are not writing that much code as you used to, right? It's like, are you useless to the company? Are you tanking your career because you are not doing commits, right? You're having meetings with people, right? You're sitting with them and telling them things and so on and influencing, and then you meet with managers and this class of people, right? And you go to a sprint planning and say like, well, we need to do this or that, or no, this is more complex or whatever. And then you spend 4 hours like that in a day. You go for lunch, right? And then it's like, what is happening here, right? So you look at your calendar for the next day, and it's like, so I have a meeting, I have 25 minutes of nothing, I have another meeting, right? Then I have like half hour, I have another meeting, and so I'm gonna code so much in these 25 minutes and in these 30 minutes slot, right? That's gonna, like in magic, it's gonna happen there. And it doesn't, right? So there is a moment when you have to realize that, yes, some meetings are useless, right? But some meetings are very useful, right? So I always tell my people that there is something that they need to consider when deciding to go to a meeting. And then they say like, what do you mean deciding to go to a meeting? It's like, yes, every meeting is optional, but you need to consider 2 things. A, you get value out of it. So for example, you're the junior person, like I was like a few years ago. Meetings are very useful for knowing what you have to do, right? Like you are there with code, with machines, with people. Like what should I do, right? So this class of like team meetings and so on, they're useful for knowing the context, for knowing what is important. And the second thing that is where usually people don't consider is like, you might be the one providing that value. So you might not be the person that is going to learn something in the meeting, but you're going to be teaching them, or you're going to be guiding them, or you're going to be influencing them. A good TL knows that very well and actually makes meetings really effective, right? And remember another thing, there is no senior folks, there is no senior engineers, there is no senior staff, there is no fellows, there is no whatever, without junior people, right? So it is your role at this moment to grow, to coach, to teach the junior people that is coming into the pipeline of your teams. Typically the companies, they keep growing, so they need more people, some others are leaving, so you are mostly all the time hiring, right? So there is always like onboarding. There is like always something that you are learning, but some things that you can teach to other person. That's a key trait of a good TL, like bringing people along. The second frustration, if you have any questions, just go for it. There is going to be questions at the end, but just go interrupt me. That's fine. You take a different role in the critical path. That's another frustration that many TLs have. It's like, so are you saying that I can't just write the feature that we are going to land in this sprint or in this version, right? It's like, no, because you have like 25 minutes to write it, and that's not going to happen, right? Or you're going to put a piece of shit in production, which is not going to be great either, right? And some people go like, nah, I'm going to quit. I'm not, right? The difference is that at the beginning you think that you are not in the critical path. You are just there as the advisor, right? But the reality is that you are in the critical path more than ever, is that your role is different, right? You might not write the actual code for your front end that is going to show there like the widget with the weather, right? Whatever that is, right? But you're going to do something else. So you're going to be part of your roadmap. So you're going to be the one that decides that, for example, that feature is really important for your product, right? You're going to be part of hiring. You're going to be part of like onboarding new people that is going to actually make those features happen, right? You are critical in the, as well, what we call the strategy, which is like very managerial kind of term, but you are critical in deciding like, okay, so that's where we are now, that's something that we can fix in a quarter, but what are the problems that we are going to have to resolve next year, right? For example, performance, or like there is a new framework coming up that is making your engineers much more efficient, so you might have to decide whether you do a migration or not, which they are always expensive, right? So this is where you are, and that's pretty critical, right? And then there is another frustration, and this is very subjective to how Google works. Like in other companies, it might be different, right? But at Google, you have this dichotomy of like the engineering manager and the TL, right? The TL is working more on this stuff, and then the engineering manager is the one that has the staffing. So are the ones that know how much people are going to be in a team, and if the team is bigger, how much, how they are going to partition. Like for example, if I have a team of 10, I'm going to put 4 people on this project and 6 in the other, right? And makes a lot of difference if you, instead of doing a partition of 4-6, you do 7-3, right? Because then In practice, you are prioritizing one project over each other, right? Just by assigning them more resources, right? So, but the TL doesn't own that. So you do not hire people in that sense, and you don't decide how many people you are going to have for a project, right? You might influence the managers for giving you more resources because it's very important, it's very hard, or whatever it is, right? But that takes what it takes, a meeting, right? So you are going to be discussing with management, you're going to be discussing with other teams, you are going to have to say, like, can you write a proposal for getting a new person more assigned to this team because we have to move it from the other, whatever it is, right? And that's not writing code. That's not like, it's like something that is more organizational and so on, but it's important when you are part of like a bigger kind of show. And that's quite frustrating for some TLs. Oops. So, at some point, you discovered yourself that you are more of an engineering manager than you thought before, right? And you say, like, you know what? I'm gonna do it myself. Give me the reporting lines, and I'm gonna run the show for you. So I don't have to discuss about the staffing. I don't have to do that. I'm gonna just run the whole thing, right? That's what I did, and it went as we will see, right? So, an engineering manager has to know or has to be conscious that their role in a team and what they need to do and what the company expects of them is different from that of a TL. So a TL is a technical lead. So you're expected to be unblocking projects, like making the team efficient, like growing people and so on, right? You are expected as well to know how the business works, but you are not accountable, like strictly saying, for that, right? A manager, for example, is accountable for the team's delivery. And teams, if you sum how much money a team of like 10, 50, 40 people, whatever it is a lot of money at the end of the year. So you are accountable for making sure that that's an investment, right? That the company is getting something out of it. It's getting features, it's getting reliability, it's getting whatever the team is doing, right? You are actually delivering on your goals. And you have to make sure that the goals you have, they are realistic as well. Because one thing a TL would do is say, like, we need to do all this. And the manager will say, like, okay, we'll do this, right? Because that's what your team can achieve, right? So that's something that is a failure mode for a manager, the one that overcommits and then burns like some teams down, right? So that's something that is important to differentiate what is the role of a TL and a manager in this case, right? You need to know as well how people works, right? And that's hard, because when you are a TL, you only see the good side of people. It's like, yeah, we'll do it, yes, we'll deliver, yes, like I'm onboarding on all of these, and we're gonna learn all that stuff, and so on and so forth, right? When you're a manager, you see as well the conflicts. You have to do performance management of people. So you have to like coach them, like teach them, like telling what they have to do. But as well, when there is someone that doesn't perform very well, you have to go into the performance plans and all that stuff, right? And that's not great. You might have to even fire people as well, right? That's what a manager does. And that's very hard, right? Deciding to fire someone is really hard, but that's something that the manager needs to be prepared to do, right? And then you as well have to know how technology works. You might not be as hands-on as a TL is, right? But when someone proposes something, you need to know if it's bullshit or not, right? If they say, like, we're going to rewrite all these services for authenticating Google users in the blockchain, right? Boy, say no, right? I don't have anything against the blockchain. It's that you need to know about, like, this is not scalable, this is not what we need for the business or whatever it is, right? And you might need to say yes to projects and staff them that they are speculative, and that you need to be prepared that these projects might fail, right? But if they succeed, they could become important in the future, right? So you need to be like conscious of this innovator's dilemma of like, yes, you might need to invest in projects that they are not like your core business, because they might become in the future, right? So these are the things that the management team needs to know, right? And for that, you need to know very well how the business works, to know how much resources you can put or when you have to pull the plug. That's another thing that is very hard for TLs, stopping things, right? Go to a person and say, like, hey, so you have been working a year in this project. There's nothing coming out of it. We know by the MVP that no one wants that. So we're going to need to stop, right? Because we can't just keep running forever on this, that we mostly are certain that it's not successful anymore, right? So that conversation is very hard because someone is invested into that project, and that's something that the manager has to do, right? being a manager is great, don't get me wrong. These are things, and I have been a manager for 5 years, right? These are things that you need to know before deciding like, hey, I'm gonna be a manager, right? Because this is something you need to be conscious of, like, these are things that you have to do. In the flip side, you have much more flexibility than a TL, because you have the resources, you have the power of the performance management as well with people, and you can hire more people, right? And you can reorganize your teams if you wanted to, right? So that's a lot of power for actually being effective and being fast at delivering the projects that you are doing. So at Google, we have one thing that's called Project Oxygen. It's like a fancy name for the traits that we see in managers that have been successful in the company. So these are guidelines. So this is not like the law in the company, but these are guidelines that we know that if a manager develops and creates and they take into account and they become good at these things, they are typically good managers, right? And there are not many. This is all of it, right? So first of all, as we said, you need to know how people work, right? And you need to help them grow. And grow can mean many things. So you need to agree with the person, right? What grow means for the other person. There is some people that is motivated by promotions, right? By like, I want the title to go up, right? And that's fair, like that. But there's some people that they want that. Other people, they say like, I just want you to leave me alone with my code, please. And that's great. That's another resource that you have in there that you can use in different fashions, right? Or there is people that they are good at doing projects that they involve like many people because they can navigate all this ambiguity and knowing people outside of the teams and so on, but they are not great at like sitting for long stretches of work, of time, like writing some code or testing it and so on, right? So you need to know how the people in your team is, to use them and to place them in projects where they can grow how they want and how they, for example, see their career advancing in the company. And there may be a point that you have to recommend someone to go to another team, right? Because the growth in your team is just not possible, for example, right? So you need to support their career, and you need to discuss performance as well. Right? So you need to tell them like you are doing well in this place, but you are not doing well in the other place. And it's not wrong. Like everyone has a strength, and you are good at many things, and you have weaknesses where you are not as developed, and that's fine. But the manager needs to be able to detect those and give you like the praise for where you are good and double down on that, and as well give you feedback of like the things that you need to evolve and you need to grow them. Right? The second block of ideas is that you are a team player. Done. Right? But the thing is like not being a team player in the sense of like the empty kind of sentence, but being a team player, for example, like empowering people. Instead of micromanage people, micromanage means like I'm going to go tell you every single day what you have to do. Right? That's not what a good manager would do. You would empower them saying like, hey, so you need to run with this project, right? And after that, you are basically delegating all the decisions on the ownership of that to the person. So they are empowered to say, like, okay, I'm going to do this in this way or design it in the other or whatever. They don't need to be isolated, so they don't need to execute in secret, right? But they are the ones that make the calls for the projects, right? And then you need to create, if possible, and I think that's something that is very important, an inclusive environment. So no jerks in your team. That's something very easy. It's like I have let go people from my team that they were excellent programmers, that they could just churn through code, that they would design systems that they were perfection, right? But they were just jerks, and it's like, sorry, that doesn't fit in the team, right? So that's something you need to be very clear to do. Like you need to have a team that the people can go along, right? And they can work together. Right? Even if you have like the top rockstar kind of performance thing, I hate that, the rockstar kind of concept. Right? That's my opinion. The third block is that you need to communicate well. Right? And I think that's very important because you might have great ideas. So you might have a roadmap in your mind that is beautiful. You might have the next business line that is going to make 100 billion. Right? You are going to have like everything that you want in your mind. But you need others to know. So you need to write it. And you need to write it in such a way that people understand it. And you need to write it in such a way that is, appealing for others to go and do it, right? So you need to be careful of like cultivate the communications skills, right? And those are hard things to do, but they really pay off over time. You have to have a clear vision of the team, effectively, but you need to be able to communicate to others so they can go behind you, right? And then you have to be results oriented. That's very important. We are not in like an NGO or whatever, so you need to provide results. So you need to launch features. So you need to ship stuff, basically. That's what needs to happen. So you need to be productive, and you need to decide what is important and what is not. That's as well something that influences a lot teams that they can ship features, and teams that they can deliver, and teams that they are not. Right? Because you are able to prioritize the top 3 things that are really important for your product or for your team or for your reliability or for whatever it is, right? And you are committed and you are going to deliver on them. I want to emphasize as well the last one, that is a strong decision maker for one reason. It's better, I argue, to make a wrong decision than to not make a decision, right? It's better to be wrong than to not be at all. Right? Because many people, many junior managers I have seen that they will just struggle to make a call and things will go on. Should we launch this feature or not? And it keeps going, right? So it's just, you might be wrong if you launch it and you have an outage, for example. But now you know what happened, and that's fine. You can learn from that, and the next launch is going to be in another fashion or whatever it is. But there was progress in there, right? Not deciding is just taking your team in stasis, right? It's like you are creating an impasse. And then you need to know as well that you project very strongly to your team, right? So if you go in the morning to the office, if you work in an office, and you're pissed, by lunch, everyone in your team is going to be pissed. So if you're not able to decide when a random IC is running a project and they need to make a call of like, I'm going to structure this in this fashion, or I'm going to get my design doc that I wrote and send it for feedback for other people. They're not going to do that. So everyone is getting slower, right? So just make calls. It's fine. You're not going to be fired. That's okay, right? Just learn from them. So now, how you transition from being an IC, then to being a TL, and then to being a manager. The transition from being an IC to a TL is more natural because it's something that grows over the same line. The transition from being a TL or an IC directly to being a manager is different, right? There are companies that they do have like a very nice career path of like, this is what you have to do before getting to be a manager. This is what the manager, that Google is not that. So we are more organic on that. And it's great because I think the bar of like people to try to want to be a manager is lower, so it's more accessible, right? But the transition usually is harder. So it goes always in trade-offs, right? The first option for transition, that's what I did, is being a TLM. A TLM is like, I'm going to do everything. Because, I'm Mr. Manager now, right? And it's a typical setup where it works well if you have not many reports, right? Because if you have a team that is reporting to you that is a lot of people, you don't have the time for all of it. Like you have to have like one-on-one meetings with your people, to see how they are. You're going to need to do like some performance review at some point. You are going to need to run the projects. You're going to need to solve some conflicts or whatever is what happens, right? So that's hard. And as well has a problem. It's like you are taking a lot out of the team. You might be actually the bottleneck for the team to grow, right? Because you are the one deciding on people, the one deciding on projects, the one deciding on the strategy of the team, and so on, right? So that there is so much bandwidth that you have, right? The other important point for a transition is the people think that you need to be a TL before managing a team, right? And as in the same vein that being a TL is being like a more impactful or like expanding your scope for an IC, right? Being a manager is another job. So it's not a linear transition. You are moving, actually at Google we have different job ladders for the managers and the engineers, right? Because it's a different job role, right? So it's not that you are being promoted, as I said in the first slide, to being from TL to a manager. Like management is not a promotion, right? And there is some people as well that they look for promotions as a manager. It's like, okay, I'm going to promote at the next level by having like reports, and that's it, right? And we will see later how that can be a failure mode, right? So you don't need to be a TL, you don't need to have a leadership position before, and so on. What you need to understand is what is the role that you are getting into, right? And not many people understand what the manager does, because many of the job or many of the activities that a manager does for the team, they are very opaque. when you are resolving a conflict, you are not announcing it. Hey, person A and B, they have a conflict, and I resolve it, right? You don't do that, right? So person C and D in your team, they don't know that happened, right? And if you're effective at that, that's very important for the team healthiness and productivity and so on. And there is a Dunning-Kruger moment. So this Dunning-Kruger effect is when you think you are great, but you are not, right? So 6 months in, right, you are pointy head boss. If you have seen like these things, the Dilbert, I think, well, whatever. So there is this comic that there is like a boss, like classic, and then at that moment, right, you feel like this is just I'm good at this. I'm born from being. It's like I don't know what I was doing before, but this is what I meant to be done, right? Like everything goes because there is some inertia when you take over a team, right? There is some inertia of the prior manager, people is already settled, until there is your first conflict, your first performance case, your first outage, and then there is some issues of like, did you discover that someone was not doing what they have to and so on, and it's like, oh, so what do I do now, right? Should I just quit or whatever, right? No. It's just fine. When you were a junior engineer, for example, there were problems that they were just difficult, and you learned, and you brace yourself for like, like learning, I don't know, Rust or whatever is what you had to do. This is the same. It's just with other kind of dimensions. You are like speaking about people, right? So just don't get overconfident. So what are the failures mode when you are getting into management, right? Or more than failure mode is like, what are the reasons that you should not use for getting into management? The first one is to fix organizational dysfunctions, what I call the hero. So you are in a team that is dysfunctional for some reason. There are many dysfunctions of a team, right, that they can happen. You have a bad manager. You are a team that is not well positioned in the organizational structure for like doing what you have to do. You are a team that doesn't have enough staffing. I have been there, for example, a team that has too much support and services that are so unstable that you just spend your day fixing shit, but you are not doing projects to prevent shit to be fixed, right? So that's dysfunctions. And then there goes the TL. I'm gonna fix that, right? There you go, right? It's not always a failure mode in the sense that there is some senior people that they know where they have to go to help the team, and they go do it, and they are very conscious of like, now I can do my projects and so on, and I need to focus in like improving certain communications, or having different style, or focusing more in with people and so on. That could work. I have seen them like to be a coin flip, basically, 50-50 kind of a scenario, because the other variant of this is the hero that is going to just tell everyone what they have to do because they know better, right? And that goes so far, right? Well, they go so far. Typically, team tanks after that, right? Because it's like, what I'm doing here, the IC is going to say like, ciao, right? And then when you don't have people in your team, it's kind of hard, right? The second failure mode is like you are bored. Right. There is a point in the career of some people when you become like more senior or whatever that you become bored. Bored in the sense of like, you know what you're doing. You don't want to take on more, or you don't want to take on harder problems, or do you want to move to another team to do something else? Is it you coast? You know what you're doing, right? And it's fine. You do it well, and it's important. I'm not saying that you are not performing well. Is that it's okay? Like, you know your project, you know your launches, you know your code, you know the people. That's it, right? And then you become bored, and it's like, well, I'm gonna look for other emotions, kind of thing. It's like, I'm gonna do management now because there is a role, or my management have left, and they are looking for another. So I'm gonna fill that gap, right? No great, right? Because you are not doing it for a reason. You don't have a goal for yourself and for the team and for the company that you need to align. You are doing it because why not, right? And that's not flying very well. And the last failure mode, and this is the capital one, is to get a promotion. Some people go, I want to get a promotion to senior engineer. Nah, the promo committee, if it works like that in your place, nah, because we see A, B, and C feedback, they get pissed. Okay, I'm gonna get into management because I'm gonna have so much power now to do A, B, and C like fast, right? And that doesn't work very well because people in this case, they become like accustomed of like telling people what to do, or they have an agenda, or they create an inner circle, and then teams become toxic, right? So if there is something you need to remember from my talk that is long and boring, is this. Management is not a promotion, right? Management is a different job role that you have in a company. That's it. So it's not, you are not better for being a manager, right? And you don't have definitely a bigger hammer to tell people what they have to do and so on. You are treating with people anyway. So yes, you are accountable for the team success. Yes, you are going to have an agenda. Yes, when you are a manager, you get shit from below because people is going to complain to you, and from above because your leaders, they want to like push for more features, more efficiency, whatever it is, right? So you are in a sandwich kind of situation. So the thing is, it's just a different thing, right? So there is people writing the features. Without those engineers, nothing would happen. And there is managers making sure the things are going as they go. Without them, nothing will happen either, right? So it's just you're taking another role in the success of your team. But then say like, I'm going back. That's what I did. So you go back to engineering from, I mean, always engineering, but you know, you go back to not being a manager, right? So why would someone do this, right? In my case, it was the first. My tour of duty was complete. Right? I spent 5 years, I saw it was effective, I learned a lot of things, and it's like, I know now that for the company, I'm going to be more useful as an engineer than a manager, right? Because there is some projects that I know I'm effective to that, because there is some opinions that I have that I want to push, because there is some ideas that I want to deliver or whatever it is. That's okay, you can go back. Great. What are the benefits of going back? You are much more effective, you are much more efficient, you are much more valuable to the company. Why? Because you are an engineer, so you know your stuff, but you know how people work as well. And you know very much deeply how much or how the company business operates, where are the weak spots, where are the things that they are strong, and so on. So whenever there is a project that is ambiguous, whenever there is a project that is hard, whenever there is a project that you need to launch very fast, for example, you are much more effective at that, right? So being a manager is great. I'm not recommending you to be a manager to not be a manager after that, right? You can certainly do like a whole career as a manager. I have had really good managers that they are super excellent managers, that they keep being the managers, but you need to know that at some point, right, your engineering skills, they start to deteriorate because you are not using them as much, right? So you are not going to know the last Java, or you are not going to know Rust, and this is the thing that is going on, right? So there is a point that you need to either say, like, I'm going to be a manager, right, because that's what I do, this is what I can evolve my career on, or if you want to come back to engineering, don't wait that much, right? So I think you need to, a tour of duty of between 2 and 4 years is what I recommend, right? You can't be a manager for 6 months because that's a waste of everybody's time. But after like 4 or 5 years, you need to consider if you want to go back to engineering, might be your time, right? To consider that. You can go back again, right? This is why I call it the pendulum, because you go back and forth, and that's fine, right? And then you go back to engineering to get a promotion. Just don't do that, right? Get promotions and get projects. Just land shit, ship it to the users, like make your products and your company better. Do that. Don't get like management and out of it for that, right? And there is another transition for that, right? So the first time I didn't have any reports, I got a project and it's like, I know this. I know how to do commits in my repository and put them to production, right? You saw that outage? That's what happened. So things changed, like all the CI/CD pipeline was different, all the config pushes to the production was different. It's like, I commit here and that's fine, right? And it's like, no, right? And then it's like, okay, it's not going to production, let me push it by hand. Oh, fuck. Right? So that's what happens. So it's okay to not know your stuff from the day one. It's fine to have to know kind of things. They are just mechanics. You know engineering. It's just you don't know the latest version of whatever you were doing, and that's fine. That's fixable. You have the best of both worlds, right? Like you can navigate organizations much better than before, right? You can go to meetings and choose like which meeting to go, and you can actually go to a meeting and instead of being an hour discussing something, cut it in 5 minutes because you know how to make the decisions and so on. That's beautiful, right? And there is going to be again another Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Where you say like, you learn your stuff, you're Captain Marvel now, and it's like you can push things into production like that. Like no one in your team can ship things like faster than you until like things break, right? So The outage I mentioned was my like discovery moment of like, well, perhaps I was not as good as I was thinking, right? So just keep improving. Like, make decisions. Like, you are gonna fail at some, and that's beautiful. That's fantastic. You are gonna learn from that. That's what you need to do. Right? And that's it. So, summary: grow progressively. It's fine to take time to do things, right? If you have a career plan, it's like, I want to be director of engineering. I want to be a CTO. You're not going to be the CTO tomorrow morning. Just go progressively into the role, right? That's okay, right? You need to have a reason for why you get into management and outside of management, right? It's not, well, there was a position open. Say, okay, well, fine, thank you, but I'm not in your, don't want to be in your team, right? So have a reason. It's because you want to develop yourself. It's because there is a opportunity to restructure something in your team or your company that you wanted to do. Is because it aligns with your values or with your career plans. Just have reasons for doing things, because that's what is going to guide you on the next steps, right? Remember that there are good management traits. So this is not going to Harvard Business Review and reading the latest MBA kind of crap. It's just, there are things that they're proven, and there are things that you know that you can develop, and there are things that you can cultivate. Like, so learn that, because I think it's very useful, right? And then after some point, just go back. When you go into management, right? There is a moment that you say, like, look, I'm done. Like, my job is done here. There's a meme that says my job is done, right? So do that. That's fine. You completed. You achieved what you want. The reason that you had to get into the management was completed. Go back. Do something else. That's okay. You can always be an IC, so you don't have to do anything that I did. That's okay as well, right? The point is that you need to have reasons for doing what you are doing. And I'm seeing many people that they are just going into like inertia, right? And I don't recommend that, because the first thing that you are going to do is tanking probably your team. Things to read. This stuff is useful. These are two from Charity Majors. Read her. She's really great, right? So if you want to read about management, read this. Charity is charity.WTF. There is heaps of knowledge in there, right? This is about Project Oxygen. I think this is from Google, but Amazon, I think they have their own kind of thing, or other company, like, I don't know, whatever company it is will have their own like principles. And this is something, maker's schedule, manager's schedule, is a very old essay for Paul Graham that explains what I meant about the meetings, right? And when you are a maker, you're going to have a clean day to do your stuff. And in order to be productive, to write code and all that stuff, you're going to need 2 hours of settling in the morning until you get into the point that you can actually do what you wanted, right? And when you are not a manager, just embrace the fact that you are not a manager. You are going to have the meetings and so on, but the work is the meetings, and the work is the decisions, and the work is the support to the people. So just take that into account. 30, done. Questions?